All right, Mr. Jury. Now, another request by Labour is that it does not want the Chief of Staff, Gbajabiamila, to lead negotiations on government side. What's going on in that regard?
My tendency is to avoid making very important and critical issues into the kind of trivialized and personalized statements that tend to be bandied around in the public domain by certain parties and actors. The issues confronting Nigerians are far too dire and serious to be talking about who should be sitting in a conference room and who should not be sitting in a conference room. We are all adults. I want to believe that we are all patriots and we are all Nigerians. And so the notion that any consideration would be higher than the consideration of what Nigerians are going through and the urgent and swift need for us to implement those measures that will bring succor to Nigerian families across this great nation. The notion that anything would be more important than that is ridiculous. And so I don't want to dedicate too much time to any of those kinds of trivial statements. I would just say that we are going to continue to effectively engage in the good faith negotiations we are engaging in. And I must say, despite the kinds of public posturing that we see from certain stakeholders, that the actual work of getting these policies moving from ideation stage into effective implementation stage, that process is going on well. And that's what matters.
All right. So let's take a look at another relief packages announced by President Tinubu, like acquisition of 3,000 buses for mass transit. What stage are we on this?
Great question. So this is a major part of what I was referring to earlier when we talk about the CNG revolution that Mr. President is very aggressively pushing forward. Yes, I did refer to, obviously, the supply side, dealing with the establishment of CNG filling stations where Nigerians can access the CNG with convenience. Then dealing with the demand side, I talked about the conversion kit so that you can convert the over 13 million vehicles plying Nigerian roads every day over a period of time with a very creative long-term financing arrangement that would cater to all levels of salaries of Nigerian workers across the formal and informal economic sectors. So that deals with that. But then you've touched on the next leg of the demand side of the CNG revolution, which is the provision of over 3,000 buses, CNG fueled buses, approximately 20-seater buses in the country. Now, that is obviously a far cry, right, from satiating aggregate national demand when you talk about commercial transportation, which is why it's only one. I want to emphasize this because I've been on television and radio across this great country over the course of the last several days, and one of the concerns Nigerians consistently raise with me is the idea that 3,000 buses is just insufficient. And we agree with them. But it's important for them to know that it's not in isolation. That's not the only thing that we're doing. Yes, Mr. President did announce the provision of over 100 billion naira for the manufacturing and provision of 3,000 CNG fueled buses to be sent to all of our major urban transportation centers across all states of the Federation. But in addition to that, what is being overlooked is that Mr. President also approved a very substantial financing package for transport companies in the country. This financing package is going to be running at a single-digit interest rate loan with a moratorium and a long repayment plan of, I believe, over 5 years. So when you have that in place, and you have also the incentive that this administration has on ground for automobile manufacturers, essentially a 10-year tax relief window has been provided for automobile manufacturers to enhance local production of automobiles, buses, and the like. You will now know that the 3,000 is just essentially, look at it as government's provision to kind of provide an initial boost to the manufacturing boom, automobile manufacturing boom in the country. But it is not the end game. The end game is essentially creating the incentives so that the private sector comes in very aggressively with the tax reliefs that they're going to get that are internationally competitive, and also the massive financing package that we're putting in place through our banks to further incentivize automobile manufacturers in the country to move into CNG, to move into EV production, that's electric vehicle production and the like. These are the incentives that will ensure that we get production that far outpaces and outstrips the 3,000 CNG buses that we want to provide in the immediate term. So there's the difference between the immediate plan and then the medium to long-term plan, which involves putting in the incentives now for the private sector to come in. Now, what Mr. President is doing, which is characteristic of almost all of his other economic reform efforts across the other sectors, is that in manufacturing, he is saying that it is not enough for us to continue to simply just import whole buses or import whole vehicles anymore, that we move beyond that stage. We have tens of millions of able-bodied, very brilliant, very innovative young Nigerians across this country craving and thirsting for an opportunity to put their hands on the wheel of national development. And we're saying we're going to provide them that steering wheel. And the way we're going to do that is ensure that not only will they have access to training so that they can be part of the process of things like CNG conversion and the process of manufacturing CNG fueled buses and vehicles across the length and breadth of our country, but also to ensure that we get maximum value out of this. If we are producing all of the inputs that go into the manufacturing of these buses, then you know that the wealth generation is staying within the country, the job creation is staying within the country, and the tax net will automatically increase with the increase in job creation. So the revenues in the country will only expand. That is the focus of Mr. President.
All right. But when it comes to the MSMEs, who are regarded as the major drivers of the economy, how is the government interfacing with them to bring its plans to fruition?
Very important. So it's one thing to deal with our individual citizens and what we can do for them and their families. It's another thing entirely to deal with businesses that are obviously impacting several families at a go. What His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has put on the table is a set of MSME capitalization initiatives, but not just for micro and small and medium scale enterprises, also for large industry. So let me start with the large industry. Mr. President has put in place what we call, this administration calls the 75 for 75. 75 billion naira worth of very low interest rate financing facilities for 75 selectively targeted large industries across all states of the Federation, across senatorial districts, where we're going to be able to intervene with 1 billion naira for each industry over a 9-month period, so that we do a few things. Number one, we ensure that we first stop job losses. We want to stop the loss of existing jobs. That's number one. The second one is this fund will go to ensure that those industries are able to expand their operations and add new jobs, create new jobs for unemployed Nigerians. And then, of course, on the third leg of that is ensuring that these industries are industries that would have full backward integration into other parts of the economy, where these are not import-based industries, for example. These are industries that are focused on starting their products with raw materials sourced from Nigeria and finishing the value addition within Nigeria as well, so that Nigeria gets full value. These are the companies that we're focused on in the 75 for 75. So that's our package for large industries, in addition to the traditional lending that will continue to run from the Central Bank of Nigeria for large industry, continue to run from the Development Bank of Nigeria for large industry, that will continue to run from the Bank of Industry for large industry, and the like. So large industry is definitely taken care of by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But because Mr. President is a progressive, because he has always been concerned with Nigerians who have been at the bottom rung of the economic ladder in this country, who he's desperate to assist them to climb up that ladder. He's now focused also on MSMEs, which is why he's put in place a measure, a facility of 175 billion naira in the first instance, 50 billion of which will be given in the form of grant, meaning that our people, our small business owners across this country, in all states of the Federation, those who access this grant, which will be digitally transferred, so it's not going to be a situation where some bureaucrat or some corrupt politician will come and divert it. It will be impossible based on the system we're building. What we're doing is we're going to ensure that they have a grant of 50,000 naira over the course of the next 8 months. Over 1,000 small businesses across all states of the Federation will have access to 50,000 naira grant. Then we've now separately put in place a 125 billion naira facility, which is a low interest rate facility running on a repayment of about 36 months, about 4 years, where our small businesses will be able to, on a low interest rate, access the needed resources they require right now to stop job losses and to expand their existing operations. How this is going to work is that we're looking at over 100,000 micro and small enterprises across this country that will be able to benefit from that 125 billion naira low interest financing package that Mr. President has urgently put in place to address their immediate needs. Now, I want to emphasize that what Mr. President has laid out for Nigerians in a very communicative and interactive way has been that this is an immediate package. This is not the medium-term to long-term solution. He's simply meeting Nigerians where they are right now, which is hurting from current economic conditions in the country. And so when we talk about the MSME capitalization efforts, when we talk about the CNG rollout, when we talk about what we're doing in terms of the mass review of the national minimum wage.
Well, sadly, we're running out of time, but let's quickly talk about one sector with a huge potential for government to implement these palliatives, and that's agriculture. What are the strategies in place to boost this sector?
As Mr. President announced to Nigerians, he has directed the immediate release of 200,000 metric tons of grains from our strategic grain reserves for onward distribution to our states and our local markets nationwide. We need to do everything in the power of the federal government, Mr. President, at the forefront of this, driving this with urgency to ensure that we crash the price of food in the country. That is a major step in that direction. But recognizing that releasing grains from the strategic grain reserves on its own would be insufficient, the President wisely said, look, we also need to ensure that while we're supplying the markets for the benefit of the end users, for the Nigerian customers, we also need to take care of the producers. So he has also directed that 225,000 metric tons of worth of fertilizers, seedlings, and other agricultural supplements are provided to our farms across our nation so that they can bolster production to not only replace the grains that have been mobilized out of the strategic grain reserves to refill the reserves, but also to ensure that we up the level of production across the country for onward mobilization to our farms and our markets nationwide. To our markets nationwide. Now, the President has also said, I need to make this point because many of our people may not have heard this before. The President has said, within the ambit of that that infrastructure support fund for states, which I mentioned earlier in the program, as part of the subsidy savings, as Mr. President has been able to compartmentalize the various components of the savings, it's strategically being directed at the reconstruction and new construction of local roads. These are roads under the ownership of the local governments. Many Nigerians don't know that as of now, of all the roads nationwide in this country, Nigeria has 200,000 kilometers of road nationwide. All roads in the country, 200,000 kilometers. Today in the country, we have 16,000 kilometers, 16,000 kilometers that belongs to the federal government, meaning Federal Ministry of Works only controls 16,000 kilometers of road in the country. Now, the other 16,000 kilometers, sorry, I said 16,000 kilometers. What I meant was 35,000 kilometers of federal road. Then the other 35,000 kilometers of road in the country, it belongs to the state governments. That combined, federal and state, is 70,000 kilometers out of 200,000. The remaining 130,000 kilometers, of road in the country, out of 200,000, belong to our local governments. Our local governments that are not funded, they're not well provided for by the state governments, unfortunately. That's something that I believe Mr. President is working assiduously toward addressing. But the local governments control these roads, 130,000 out of 200,000 in the country. So what Mr. President has said is, look, this infrastructure support for states facility that I put on ground, the states have to ensure that we devote that resource to our local roads, because those roads are the ones that really pinch the feet of our people on the ground across the states. And we want to prioritize those local roads that link farms to markets, that link industries to ports. This is the strategic vision of Mr. President, and it's important for everybody to understand how this works. So on the one hand, we are empowering our farmers. On the other hand, we are crashing the price of food by distributing to our markets nationwide. But the third and most important leg is that Mr. President is focused on developing the connective tissue, which is the local government-owned roads that link our farms to our markets, so that we don't have half of our production spoiled on bad roads because they can't get to the market in time.
This conversation will definitely continue some other time. I mean, we still have a lot to talk about. But I must thank you so much, Special Advisor to President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale. Tonight, we focused on President Tinubu's interventionist measures and implementation plans. Thank you so much for finding time to join us on the program. Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.